I was deep into analyzing quarterly reports when Riley swept into my office like she owned the place. Her designer heels clicked against the floor as she approached my desk with that familiar, entitled smile. "Maeve, sweetie, I need you to run out and grab my dry cleaning real quick," she said, checking her manicured nails. "It's just around the corner, and I'm swamped today." I looked up from my computer screen, blinking in disbelief. This was the third time this month she'd tried to turn me into her personal assistant. The last 2 times, I'd politely declined, but she kept pushing boundaries. "I'm not your assistant, Riley," I said calmly, turning back to my work. "I'm in the middle of preparing the monthly performance analysis for Miles." Her smile froze, then twisted into something colder. She leaned against my desk, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt more threatening than if she'd yelled. "You know what, Maeve? That attitude right there is exactly why you'll never go far in this company. Some people understand teamwork, and others—" She paused, looking me up and down. "Others think they're too good to help out." The way she said it sent a chill down my spine. I watched her walk away, and something told me this was just the beginning. I returned from lunch the next day to find chaos in my office. Riley's 3-year-old son was sitting on my chair, crayon marks decorating my desk calendar. Sticky fingerprints covered my computer monitor. Riley was nowhere to be found, but there was a note on my keyboard. "Watch Tommy for an hour. Emergency came up. Thanks." I stared at the note, fury building in my chest. No warning, no asking. Just an assumption that I'd drop everything to babysit her child while she did whatever she pleased. Tommy looked up at me with innocent eyes, and I felt my anger soften toward him. This wasn't his fault, but it was absolutely unacceptable. I gently took his hand and walked him to the front desk, explaining to the receptionist that I needed to find his mother. Then, I marched straight to Riley's usual hangout spot, the executive lounge. She was there, laughing with friends over expensive coffee, not looking like someone dealing with an emergency. "Riley," I said firmly, Tommy's hand still in mine. "This ends today. Your son needs you, and I have work to do." Her face flushed red as her friends watched. Without another word, I turned and headed straight to HR. HR took my complaints seriously. Within 2 days, an official notice was sent to all staff, including Riley. Company employees are not to be used for personal errands, childcare, or any non-work-related tasks during business hours. I thought that would be the end of it. Surely, even Riley wouldn't push back against an official HR directive. I felt relieved, thinking I could finally focus on my actual job without constant interruptions. The notice was posted on the company bulletin board, and I caught several people reading it with raised eyebrows. Some seemed supportive, nodding as they walked away. Others whispered among themselves, and I wondered what they were saying. Miles hadn't mentioned anything to me directly, but I noticed he seemed more distant during our weekly check-ins. His usual friendly demeanor felt strained, though he remained professional. I buried myself in work, completing 3 major projects ahead of schedule. The numbers were impressive. Client satisfaction up 15%, processing time down by 20%. I felt confident in my contributions, but that confidence was shattered when I overheard Riley's voice echoing from Miles's office late that evening. Her tone was sharp, demanding. "Fire her, Miles. I'm serious. If you don't deal with this situation, I swear I'll make her life hell." My blood ran cold as I realized exactly what situation she meant. Miles seemed torn over the next few days. I could see the internal struggle written across his face during meetings. He'd always praised my work ethic and results, often calling me the most competent person in the building. But the pressure from Riley was clearly mounting. Their hushed arguments echoed through the thin walls of his office. I tried not to listen, but her voice carried when she got angry. "She's disrupting the workplace harmony," I heard her say one afternoon. "Everyone's talking about how she thinks she's better than the rest of us." Miles's response was quieter, but I caught fragments. "Valuable employee," and "can't just—" The first sign of trouble came during our monthly planning meeting. I'd been leading the Richardson account for 6 months, and it was our most successful project to date. But when the new assignment sheet was distributed, my name wasn't on it. "There's been a change," Miles said without meeting my eyes. "We're moving you to data entry support for now." Data entry support. After managing million-dollar accounts. The other team members exchanged glances. Some looked sympathetic. Others seemed uncomfortable with the obvious demotion. I nodded professionally, but inside, I felt like I'd been slapped. This wasn't about my performance. It was about Riley's influence over her husband. The change in office dynamics was immediate and crushing. Colleagues who used to chat with me at the coffee machine suddenly found reasons to leave when I approached. Lunch invitations stopped coming. It was subtle at first, a turned shoulder here, a conversation that died when I walked into a room there. But gradually, the isolation became impossible to ignore. I tried to maintain my professionalism, focusing on the mundane data entry tasks I'd been assigned. But the work felt meaningless after months of strategic planning and client relationship building. During my lunch break, I sat alone in the cafeteria, picking at a salad while listening to the animated conversations around me. That's when I heard it. She thinks she's so much better than everyone else. Riley's voice carried clearly from the table behind me. Always acting like she's above helping out with simple requests. Really? Another voice responded. She seemed nice when I met her. Trust me, Riley continued, her voice loud enough that half the cafeteria could hear. She's cold and arrogant. Some people just can't handle being part of a team. I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger. She was deliberately painting me as the office villain, and from the murmurs around me, people were listening. I finished my salad and returned to my desk, wondering how much worse this could get. The email from accounting arrived on a Thursday morning, marked urgent. It requested my approval for a fund transfer, $50,000 to be moved from our main operating account to a subsidiary account I'd never heard of. Something felt wrong immediately. The request came from an email address I didn't recognize, and the formatting looked different from our usual internal communications. The subsidiary account number seemed off too. Our company accounts usually followed a specific pattern. I stared at the screen, reading the message 3 times. The transfer was supposedly for emergency vendor payments, but no specific vendors were listed. There was no documentation attached, no manager approval, nothing that would normally accompany such a large transfer. My instincts screamed warning. This had all the hallmarks of a phishing attempt or internal fraud. I'd seen similar cases in my business courses and knew better than to approve anything without proper verification. I closed the email without responding and made a mental note to ask Miles about it during our next meeting. But the next morning, I received an email confirmation that the transfer had been processed overnight, with my electronic signature attached. My hands shook as I stared at the screen. Someone had used my credentials to approve a transaction I'd never authorized. The call from HR came at 2:47 p.m. on Friday. My stomach dropped when I heard the serious tone in their voice. Maeve, we need you to come to the conference room immediately. There's been a report of unauthorized financial activity under your credentials. I walked down the hallway on unsteady legs, my mind racing. How could this have happened? I'd been so careful with my login information, and I definitely hadn't approved any transfers. The HR representative, along with the head of accounting, sat across from me with grave expressions. A stack of papers lay between us, printouts of the email thread and transfer authorization. We received a report that you approved a $50,000 transfer without proper documentation, the HR representative began. The transaction appears to have been processed using your electronic signature. I explained exactly what had happened, receiving the suspicious email, choosing not to respond, finding out later that the transfer went through anyway. But as I spoke, I could see doubt creeping into their expressions. We take financial irregularities very seriously, they said. Until we can complete a full investigation, you're being placed on unpaid suspension for 2 weeks. Unpaid suspension. The words hit me like a physical blow. I didn't authorize anything, I repeated, but they were already sliding termination paperwork across the table. Clearing out my desk felt like a funeral march. I packed my personal items, a small plant, some photos, a coffee mug, while trying to maintain my dignity. The office had gone eerily quiet. Conversation stopped when people saw me with the cardboard box. Some colleagues looked sympathetic, others curious, and a few seemed satisfied, like they'd been waiting for this moment. Riley appeared near the reception area as I headed toward the exit. She didn't even try to hide her satisfaction, leaning against the wall with her arms crossed and a smirk playing on her lips. "Actions have consequences, sweetheart," she said loud enough for the receptionist and nearby employees to hear. "Maybe next time you'll think twice about causing trouble." I wanted to respond, to defend myself, to scream that she was the one causing trouble. But I knew anything I said would only make things worse. Instead, I held my head high and walked toward the door. From the corner of my eye, I saw Miles watching from his office window. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and something in his expression made me pause. He looked conflicted, almost guilty. But then Riley called his name, and he turned away. I walked out into the afternoon sun, unemployed and unsure what would happen next. Miles sat alone in his office after hours, staring at the empty space where I used to work. The data entry position had been filled quickly, but something nagged at him about the whole situation. He'd known me for 3 years. In all that time, I'd never shown anything but integrity and competence. The financial irregularity seemed completely out of character. Riley had been pushing hard for my removal, claiming I was disruptive and arrogant, but Miles remembered my actual performance. Consistently high ratings, client praise, innovative solutions that saved the company money. The more he thought about it, the more the pieces didn't fit together. He pulled up the internal login records, something he rarely bothered to check. As the system loaded, he felt a growing sense of unease. There, in the timestamp logs, was something that made his blood run cold. The fund transfer had been approved at 11:47 p.m. on Thursday night. But according to the security logs, I had left the building at 6:15 p.m. that day. Someone else had used my credentials to make that transfer. Miles leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. If I hadn't made the transfer, then who had? And more importantly, who had access to my login information? He scrolled through more logs, looking for any unusual activity around that time period. The security footage was grainy, but clear enough. Miles watched the timestamp in the corner, 11:43 p.m., 4 minutes before the transfer was processed. A figure sat at my desk, fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. The person's back was to the camera, but Miles could make out distinctive blonde hair and a familiar designer jacket. His heart sank as the figure turned slightly, revealing a profile he knew all too well. Riley. She was using my computer, accessing my accounts, and apparently processing the very transfer that had gotten me fired. Miles watched the footage 3 more times, each viewing making him feel sicker. His own wife had framed an innocent employee, destroying my career and reputation in the process. He thought about all the pressure she'd been putting on him to fire me. The constant complaints about my attitude. The demands that I be removed from the team. It hadn't been about my performance at all. It had been about her need to win, to prove she had power over people she didn't like. Miles saved the footage to a secure drive and sat back in his chair. He had a choice to make: protect his marriage or protect an innocent employee who'd been wrongfully terminated. The decision was harder than it should have been. But deep down, he already knew what he had to do. The confrontation happened behind closed doors in their home office. Miles had waited until their son was asleep before approaching Riley with the evidence. "Did you use Maeve's computer last Thursday night?" he asked directly, pulling up the security footage on his laptop. Riley glanced at the screen, her expression remaining perfectly calm. "Why would you ask me something like that? What are you accusing me of exactly?" Her tone was innocent, almost hurt, but Miles could see the calculation in her eyes. She was already preparing her defense. "I have footage, Riley. I can see you at her desk, using her computer around the time that transfer was processed." She laughed, a sound that felt forced and brittle. "That's ridiculous. I was probably just looking for something I left in the office. You know how often I'm in and out of there. At midnight, processing financial transfers?" The innocent act cracked slightly. Riley's jaw tightened, and her voice took on a sharper edge. "Why do you care so much about her?" she demanded. "Why are you investigating this so thoroughly? Are you sleeping with her?" The accusation hung in the air between them like a poison cloud. Miles stared at his wife, seeing clearly for the first time how far she was willing to go to destroy someone who had done nothing wrong. She grabbed a wineglass from the counter and slammed it on the floor, the sound of breaking glass punctuating her scream. Miles spent 3 sleepless nights wrestling with the truth. Exposing Riley's fraud would likely end their marriage, create a custody battle, and destroy their family's reputation in the community. But letting me take the fall for her crime felt like a betrayal of everything he claimed to believe in. He thought about my 3 years of dedicated service, the late nights I'd worked on difficult projects, the clients who specifically requested to work with me because of my attention to detail and reliability. Then he thought about his son and what kind of man he wanted to be as a father. What lessons was he teaching by allowing an innocent person to suffer for his wife's vindictive actions? On Wednesday morning, he made his decision. He opened his email and typed carefully, attaching the security footage and login records he'd discovered. To HR Department. Subject: Urgent evidence, internal fraud investigation. I have discovered significant evidence that Maeve Thompson was wrongfully terminated. Attached, you will find security footage and system logs proving that another individual used her credentials to process the unauthorized transfer. This evidence clearly demonstrates that Ms. Thompson is innocent of all charges and should be immediately reinstated with full back pay. I am prepared to testify to these facts and provide any additional information needed for a complete investigation. Sincerely, Miles Harrison. He clicked send before he could change his mind. The call from HR came exactly 1 week after my suspension began. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was more bad news about the investigation. Maeve, this is Patricia from Human Resources. We need you to come back in today if possible. There have been significant developments in your case. My heart pounded as I drove to the office. What kind of developments? Had they found more evidence against me? Was I about to be formally charged with theft? The same conference room, the same serious faces, but the energy felt completely different. Patricia actually smiled when I sat down. First, I want to apologize, she began. We've discovered conclusive evidence that you were not responsible for the unauthorized transfer. Security footage clearly shows another individual using your workstation and credentials. Relief flooded through me so quickly that I felt dizzy. Another individual? The investigation is ongoing, but we have identified the person responsible. More importantly, you are completely cleared of all charges. Patricia slid a new set of papers across the table. Reinstatement documents, back pay authorization, and a formal apology letter for the company files. You're being reinstated immediately, with full back pay for the suspension period. We deeply regret this situation and any damage it may have caused to your reputation. I signed the papers with shaking hands, still barely believing this nightmare was over. Walking back into the office felt surreal. The same desk, the same computer, but everything had changed. Colleagues who had avoided me during the suspension now offered tentative smiles and welcomes. Some seemed genuinely happy to see me return. Others appeared confused about what had really happened. A few looked uncomfortable, probably wondering if they'd judged me too harshly. I settled back into my work routine, but the atmosphere remained tense. People whispered in corners, and conversations stopped when certain individuals walked by. Miles appeared at my desk around noon, looking exhausted and older than I remembered. Maeve, I'm glad you're back, he said quietly. I owe you an enormous apology. The investigation revealed some troubling information, and I should have looked into things more carefully from the beginning. His words were professional, but I could see the personal cost written in the lines around his eyes. Thank you for believing in my innocence, I replied. I know this situation must be difficult for everyone involved. He nodded grimly. There will be some changes around here over the next few days. I hope you'll be patient as we work through everything. As he walked away, I wondered what those changes would be and how they would affect the strange dynamics that had developed in the office. The changes came swiftly and dramatically. On Friday morning, Riley was escorted from the building by security, her personal items packed in a single cardboard box. I wasn't present for the termination meeting, but word traveled quickly through the office. She had been fired immediately for financial fraud, misuse of company resources, and falsifying records. The hallway buzzed with shocked whispers as employees processed the news. Riley Harrison, the boss's wife, had been caught stealing and framing another employee. She passed by my desk on her way out, flanked by 2 security guards. When our eyes met, her face twisted with pure hatred. "Enjoy it while it lasts," she hissed, her voice low enough that only I could hear. "You think you've won? You'll regret this. I promise you'll regret this." The venom in her voice sent chills down my spine. Even in defeat, she was threatening me. After she left, the office fell into an unusual quiet. People seemed unsure how to react or what to say. The woman who had ruled the social dynamics of our workplace was gone, leaving a strange vacuum in her wake. Miles didn't emerge from his office for the rest of the day. I focused on my work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Riley's threats weren't empty. Something told me this wasn't over. The rumors started over the weekend and exploded by Monday morning. Someone had posted on social media that Miles and I were having an affair, complete with elaborate details about secret meetings and inappropriate workplace relationships. The posts spread rapidly through local community groups and professional networks. By the time I arrived at work, several colleagues had already seen them. Walking into the office kitchen for coffee, I noticed the immediate change in atmosphere. Conversations stopped mid-sentence when I appeared. People suddenly found their phones fascinating or remembered urgent tasks that required their immediate attention. The silence felt deafening. "Don't let them get to you," whispered Sarah, one of the few colleagues who had consistently supported me. "Anyone with half a brain knows those posts are pure fiction." But I could see the damage was already spreading. Raised eyebrows, knowing looks, hushed conversations that ceased when I approached. Someone had clearly orchestrated this character assassination, and I had a strong suspicion about who was behind it. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd been cleared of financial fraud only to be accused of personal misconduct. It seemed there was no end to the creative ways someone could try to destroy my reputation. By lunchtime, the whispers had reached every corner of the building. I found Miles in his office, staring out the window with his head in his hands. His usual composed demeanor had cracked, revealing the stress and exhaustion underneath. "You need to shut this down," I said firmly, closing the door behind me. "These rumors are out of control, and they're affecting both of our reputations." Miles looked up, his face pale and drawn. "I know, I've been trying to figure out how to address it, but..." "But what?" He sighed heavily. "It's too late, Maeve. My board of directors has already heard about the allegations. They're launching a formal ethics review on both of us." The words hit me like a physical blow. An ethics review meant interviews, investigations, scrutiny of every professional interaction we'd ever had. "This is exactly what she wanted," I said, anger building in my voice. "Riley knew that even false accusations would cause damage." "I'm aware of that," Miles replied sharply, then caught himself. "I'm sorry. This whole situation is a nightmare, and I feel responsible for dragging you into it." We stood in silence for a moment, both understanding the gravity of what we were facing. "What happens if the board finds against us?" I asked. Miles met my eyes with a look of grim determination. "Then we fight it, because I won't let her destroy you, or this company, with lies." The divorce papers were filed on a Tuesday morning. Miles had reached his breaking point with Riley's escalating manipulation and vindictive behavior. Word of the filing spread through the office quickly, adding another layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. Some employees seemed relieved that the toxic dynamic was finally being addressed. Others worried about the stability of the company leadership. Miles called an all-hands meeting to address the rumors and speculation. "I want to be transparent with everyone about what's happening," he began, his voice steady despite the obvious stress. "My personal life has become complicated, but it will not affect this company's operations or our commitment to our clients." He paused, looking directly at me before continuing. "There have been false allegations made against myself and other employees. I want to be absolutely clear. These claims are baseless and motivated by personal vendetta, not fact." After the meeting, Miles approached me privately. "I won't let her destroy you," he said quietly. "I've already failed you once by not investigating the fraud claims more quickly. I won't make that mistake again." His determination was reassuring, but I could see the personal cost this battle was taking on him. The ethics review was still looming, and I knew the worst might yet to come. The ethics hearing took place in the company's main conference room, with 3 board members presiding over the proceedings. Miles and I sat at opposite ends of a long table, flanked by our respective representatives. For 2 hours, we answered detailed questions about our professional relationship, our communication patterns, and any interactions that might have appeared inappropriate to outside observers. The board reviewed email chains, meeting schedules, and witness statements from colleagues. They examined the timeline of events surrounding Riley's termination and my reinstatement. When asked about the rumors circulating on social media, I stated clearly, "Those allegations are completely false. My relationship with Mr. Harrison has been strictly professional throughout my employment here." Miles corroborated my statement and provided additional context about his wife's pattern of vindictive behavior toward employees she disliked. After deliberating for an hour, the board returned with their verdict. "We find no evidence of inappropriate conduct between Mr. Harrison and Ms. Thompson," the chairwoman announced. "However, given the circumstances surrounding recent events, Mr. Harrison will remain on probationary status for 6 months. Then she turned to me with an unexpected announcement. "Ms. Thompson, the board would like to offer you a promotion to Director of Internal Operations, effective immediately." I sat in stunned silence, barely able to process what I just heard. My new role as Director of Internal Operations gave me access to files and systems I'd never seen before. What I discovered in the first week was shocking. Riley had left behind a trail of financial irregularities that went far beyond the single transfer that had gotten me fired. Fake vendor invoices, unauthorized budget changes, missing receipts for thousands of dollars in business expenses. The deeper I dug, the more I realized how systematically she had been stealing from the company. The $50,000 transfer was just the tip of the iceberg. I spent long hours documenting everything, creating a comprehensive report for the board and law enforcement. Each discovery made me angrier, not just at the theft, but at how close she had come to pinning it all on me. One particularly disturbing finding was a series of fake marketing campaigns that existed only on paper. Riley had been billing the company for advertising that was never purchased, pocketing the difference. The total amount of her theft exceeded $200,000 over 18 months. When I presented my findings to Miles, his face went through a range of emotions: shock, anger, and finally a kind of grim acceptance. "I had no idea it was this extensive," he said quietly. "She was stealing from her own family's livelihood." The revelation about the vendor kickbacks came from an unexpected source. Marcus, who ran our largest shipping contractor, called me directly with information he'd been hesitant to share. "I probably should have said something earlier," he admitted during our phone conversation. "But Mrs. Harrison approached me about 6 months ago with a proposition." According to Marcus, Riley had suggested a scheme where he would inflate his invoices by 10% and split the extra money with her. When he refused, she had threatened to find a new shipping contractor. "I documented everything in case she tried to follow through on her threats," he said. "I can send you copies of all our communications if it would help." The emails he forwarded were damning. Riley had explicitly proposed fraud and then became increasingly hostile when Marcus declined to participate. But the most shocking revelation was in the final email of the chain, sent just 2 days before my suspension. "Fine," Riley had written. "I'll find another way to get the money I need, and I'll deal with the people causing problems around here." Reading those words, I realized that framing me hadn't been a spur-of-the-moment decision. It had been a calculated plan to remove someone she saw as an obstacle while simultaneously covering up her own crimes. I forwarded everything to our legal department and law enforcement. The custody hearing was swift but emotionally charged. Miles had documented evidence of Riley's erratic behavior, her fraud conviction, and her failure to appear for court-ordered parenting evaluations. I wasn't directly involved in the proceedings, but Miles shared the outcome with me afterward. He had been granted temporary sole custody of their 4-year-old son, Tommy. She didn't even show up, he told me, exhaustion evident in his voice. Her own child's custody hearing, and she couldn't be bothered to appear. The little boy I remembered from that chaotic day in my office was now caught in the middle of his parents' bitter divorce. It broke my heart to think about how confused and scared he must be. Miles was doing his best to maintain stability for Tommy while managing the company and dealing with ongoing legal issues. The stress was clearly taking its toll. "Thank you," he said quietly as we finished reviewing some budget reports, "for helping me hold everything together during this nightmare." I nodded, understanding that he meant more than just work responsibilities. The company had remained stable and profitable despite the chaos in his personal life, and everyone had pulled together to make that happen. It felt good to be part of a team that could weather such a significant storm. The board's decision to promote me again came as a surprise to everyone, including myself. They had observed my performance during the crisis and decided to make me Miles's equal partner in running the company. Effective immediately, Maeve Thompson will serve as co-director of operations, the chairwoman announced during our monthly staff meeting. She will share executive responsibilities with Miles Harrison. The promotion meant I was no longer Miles's employee. I was his business partner. The change in dynamics was immediate and positive. Colleagues who had shunned me during the false accusations now sought my guidance on projects and decisions. The same people who had whispered about alleged improprieties were now asking for my leadership on complex initiatives. It was gratifying to see how quickly workplace respect could shift when people understood the truth about what had really happened. Sarah stopped by my new office. Yes, I finally got an office with a door, to congratulate me. "You deserve this," she said with a genuine smile. "You've handled everything with such grace and professionalism. A lot of people would have filed lawsuits or burned bridges, but you just kept working and proving your worth." Her words meant more to me than any official recognition. Riley's final attempt at revenge came through social media, where she posted a series of increasingly unhinged accusations about abuse, favoritism, and corruption at the company. The posts were clearly the work of someone spiraling out of control. They contradicted each other, made impossible claims, and included threats that bordered on harassment. Rather than engage with the drama, I chose to respond with facts. I posted a single image, a screenshot of the HR investigation results that had cleared me of all wrongdoing, along with the formal apology letter from the company. The caption was simple: "Truth has a way of surfacing. Thank you to everyone who believed in my integrity during a difficult time." The post was shared widely by colleagues and professional contacts who had followed the situation. The contrast between Riley's emotional accusations and my factual response was stark. Within 24 hours, Riley had deleted her posts and disappeared from social media entirely. A few days later, I received a message from a local reporter asking for a comment about the workplace drama that had captured so much attention. My response was brief. Some stories don't need headlines. They just need closure. The reporter didn't pursue the story further. 6 months later, I stood in front of a room full of employees at our company retreat, looking out at faces that had become genuinely friendly and respectful. The crisis had passed, and stronger systems were in place to prevent future fraud. Miles had completed his probationary period successfully, and our business partnership had proven effective and profitable. More importantly, the toxic atmosphere that had poisoned our workplace was gone. People collaborated openly, shared ideas freely, and treated each other with basic human dignity. During my presentation on our quarterly achievements, I reflected on everything that had happened. The false accusations, the suspension, the rumors, all of it had been designed to destroy my career and reputation. Instead, it had revealed my true character and led to opportunities I never would have imagined. Tommy was thriving in his father's care, and Miles had found a healthier work-life balance. Even the employees who had initially believed the rumors had come to respect my leadership and judgment. As I concluded my remarks, I shared a thought that had sustained me through the darkest moments of the whole ordeal. They said I wasn't down to earth because I refused to compromise my principles or accept inappropriate treatment. But I've learned that being grounded doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. It means standing firm in the truth, even when it's difficult. The applause was genuine and warm, a far cry from the whispers and cold shoulders I had endured just months earlier. Sometimes the best victories are the quiet ones, where integrity wins over manipulation and truth ultimately prevails.